Science of Learning Education Network and how the science of learning can address the COVID-19 crisis for education. I'm Bob Wise, the interim coordinator for the Global Network, and I'm joined by co-founder of the Global Network, Dr. Andrea Chiva, a professor at the University of California, San Diego, and the co-leader and founding science director at the University of California, San Diego's Temporal Dynamics Learning Center. As we're making opening remarks, I encourage you to sign in on the chat areas so we can see who is here, and then furthermore be able to follow up and to send you materials, including a recording of this meeting. I also want to thank the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative for making this conference possible, as well as past funding support from the Yacob Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, National Science Foundation, the Dan Leeds and the Enfranchisement Foundation. I also want to thank the National Public Education Support Fund and its CEO, Frank Gettridge, who's on this call, for their support and fiscal sponsorship of the Global Science of Learning Education Network. So this background I've chosen behind me shows why global networks like this and others on the call are even more necessary. UNESCO tells us that 1.5 billion children in 189 nations are not in school today. Over 63 million teachers, if they're teaching at all, are suddenly teaching in new and unfamiliar ways. When I was a state and public official, I learned valuable lessons from leading responses to major disasters. I never obviously was involved in a disaster of this magnitude or a crisis of this magnitude. Currently, the world is in what I call the secure and stabilize phase. That's the phase where we're performing education triage for uprooted students and teachers and parents. That's the first phase. My experience is that then comes the second phase, the restoring, the rebuilding, and recreating, where every education leader and policymaker must decide what the new learning environment and all of our learning environments are going to be changed, what that new learning environment will be. Think for a moment. Never in the lifetime of anyone on this call, and I believe never in history, has the world's education system and economy been so completely shut down all at the same time. This is a world crisis and pandemic combined with a global recession. There is a saying where I grew up that when the ox is in the ditch, everyone must jump in to push it out. The impact of this pandemic on education is not just limited to one area, to one region, to one nation, or to one culture. It is not a situation where a number of us from different nations point to another nation and say, sorry for their problem. This is one that affects all of us simultaneously and deeply. And this also mandates an unprecedented necessity and opportunity for us to share the best science of learning research, practice, and strategies for implementation. That's why we're here today, to learn from each other and discuss how we can work together as a network to help inform the key decisions that will be made in the next months across the entire world. We're going to be moving, some maybe already are, from the triage stage to the planning, rebuilding, recreating stage. Many on this call have been on the Global Science of Learning Education Network's advisory group that have identified, to start, 4 key priorities where science of learning could, and while working together and applying science of learning, we could have impact on these important global decisions. The Global Science of Learning Education Network focuses on engaging all sectors key to wide-scale science of learning implementation. Researchers, practitioners, philanthropists, and policymakers coming together in networks and in teams to develop and share strategies that will be successful across different cultures and nations. We seek to be a true network that supports and shares, not competes, with the many important organizations and people on this call. Our world has been changed forever. As every nation now moves from triage to the transformation of its education system, never has there been a more important time for the science of learning to be instrumental in showing the way to ensure that equity, improved academic outcomes, and opportunities to lead a life of purpose are infused in all the world's education systems. The science of learning and the learning sciences are critical at this vital time in our world's history.